Steven Wright was elected chairman of the Dorchester County Republican Party in 2021. Now he's seeking re-election. He tells me his plans for the party if re-elected for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Steven Wright, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good morning, Quintin. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Of course, you are the current Dorchester County GOP chairman. And I know that last week you all made some big news because according to Channel 2, Dorchester County leaders proposed single-member districts for the school board. According to WCBD, chairmen from both the county Democratic and, of course, the Republican parties joined together recently for a press conference in Somerville to share their support for changing the Dorchester District 2 school board from at-large to single-member districts. Why this? Why now?
Well, Quintin, first, thank you for having me. It's always great to speak with you. The reason that we're supporting this initiative is because Dorchester District 2 has a geographic monopoly on the school board. And what I mean by that is a majority of the members live within 2 to 3 miles of each other. Now, our district has unique challenges, unique issues, and in order to understand those issues, we need equal representation from every area of that school district. Dorchester District 2 right now is the only school district in the Low Country and one of the only school boards in the state that still elects their members via at-large system.
Right.
By breaking up that monopoly of representation, it will make it less expensive to run for office, and it will restore that trust between voters and those that represent us on the school board.
So what are those unique issues and values right now?
Well, I think what has happened over the course of the last couple of weeks with the controversy around Steve LaPrade, I'm not sure the school board would have really understood the importance of that issue unless Kelly Bates was on the school board. Kelly Bates was just elected last year, and she is the first school board member to represent North Charleston. And so that is just one issue. Whether we're dealing with the way in which attendance lines are being drawn or the challenges that students are facing, I think it's incredibly important to ensure that every school is equally represented on the school board and not just those in certain areas of the community.
What attendance line issues do you all have a problem with right now?
Well, right now there's immense overcrowding in some schools, and there's not that much overcrowding in others. So the school board really needs to take a new look at the way in which we're drawing those lines. You have certain middle schools that are way over capacity by 300 or 400 students, and you have other schools that may be potentially under capacity. But additionally, we obviously will need to build new schools in the future.
Yes, sir.
And so by having equal representation on the board that represents all of the school board, all of the county, that's critically important to ensure that we have an accountable school board to the voters.
I know you're not on the Dorchester District 2 board, and I know that you're not on Dorchester County Council or work for Dorchester County government, but where do you see these new schools being built in Dorchester County?
That's a very important point. I know that the school board will need to make those decisions, but Somerville is growing.
Yes.
Ridgeville, yes. Summers Corner is growing. North Charleston is growing. And so it's critically important that when the school board does decide to build new schools, they build them for the future. Because what we find is that you build a new school, and then the next year after that new school is open, they're putting trailers out in the courtyard or in the playgrounds. So we need to maybe have a better approach. And what I will say is that County Council has been beating this drum for years that the school board needs to work more collaboratively with them, whether it's planning, whether it's planning for new schools, planning for future budgets. That relationship really doesn't exist right now. And so I believe by having single-member districts and having a more accountable school board, those relationships will be forged.
So what is the Dorchester County Republican Party's relationship with the DD2 school board?
Right now, we did endorse candidates in that school board race. It is a nonpartisan race, and our executive committee made that decision because of the importance of the issues in that race. I would say right now we are wanting to work hand in hand with the school board too, whether it's outlining materials that shouldn't be in the libraries that are directly in violation of law, or whether it is passing single-member districts. The unique opportunity that we have is for the first time in the history of DD2, all the school board members that ran last year supported single-member districts. That has never happened before. It is my hope their approach will be consistent, and they'll continue to support this initiative as the legislation is drawn up.
And how soon will that legislation be drawn out?
So our legislative delegation is actually having a meeting on Monday, February 13th, so less than a week away, and it will be a 7 o'clock at Somerville Town Council chambers. And that legislation after that meeting will likely be drawn up, and we expect that bill to pass. It's been long enough. Representative Murphy has fought for this bill for a long time. It never passed. We believe now the political will is there to get it done.
Where was the political will before, Steven?
It wasn't there. Unfortunately, there were some folks that make the decisions on this piece of legislation that didn't believe single-member districts were needed at that time. But I believe that our folks that we have elected, we've talked to, we've built those relationships, and they see that the legislation is needed now, and I appreciate their support.
Now, how much more support did you get with this?
Well, we have all the delegation members that I've spoke to are supportive of it, both Republicans and Democrats. And the reason that we held a press conference, a bipartisan press conference of parents and community members of Republicans and Democrats, is to show this is not a political issue. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is an issue that will benefit the community, and when the community demands something, it is more than likely to occur with our legislative delegation.
So how many single-member districts in DD2, for instance, will actually lead to geographically diverse members?
That's ultimately going to be drafted as the piece of legislation is written. I expect us to have 7 single-member districts. Some folks have proposed a hybrid model. That's not something that I would support. I think we need 7 independent districts, and of course the State Municipal Association will be drawing those lines, and I expect them to consider that. Now, you talk about representation.
Yes, sir.
Until Ms. Powell, who by the way was a teacher of mine, until she was elected, our board had not had an African American on the school board for over 12 years. I think that speaks a lot about the brokenness of that at-large system and why we need single-member districts.
What else was broken with that system in your mind?
Well, I think that unfortunately it created an opportunity where it gave incumbents the edge, where newcomers were unable to get their word out because it cost so much money. It should not cost $30,000 or $40,000 to win a school board race in Dorchester County, and it shouldn't require more votes to be elected to school board than it does to state house. And that's the way that current system is drawn up. That's why we need to pass a new system like every other county. Charleston passed it last year, Berkeley passed it. We need to come into the 21st century and restore that representative government that our founders talked about.
So would this be obviously population-based?
Absolutely. That is correct.
Now, would one district wind up having more sway than others?
No, potentially the way in which you would draw it is you try to draw those lines to where every district is equally represented. I believe in the county council, and don't quote me this, but there's a specific population, whether it's Congress, they have a specific number that they represent. So essentially what those folks that would draw the lines would do is they would say this is how much each board member is to represent, and they would divide those lines equally to where every district has equal representation.
Now, coming back to you as a leader, how would you actually find true local leaders to actually protect those neighborhood schools?
Well, that's the most important part is once these districts have been drawn up and we see where the lines are, it is important that we recruit those who represent our values, values of integrity, values of low taxes, values of transparency. Those are the things that we need to do, and that's what we look forward to doing once we do have single-member districts, because I believe you will have a higher level candidate to run for office. Right now, as I stated, it costs an incredible amount of money. You're running district-wide, whereas when it's single-member districts, it'll make it less difficult for those that are challenging the status quo to run and to win.
But then, how will this bring special representation without special interests?
Well, there's always going to be special interest in politics, unfortunately, but that's where the voters need to vet those that are running and ensure that they are protecting the interest of all those they represent. And that is going to be our goal, is to ensure that everyone that we support in the future, if we chose to, has the true interest of the constituents at heart.
And I know this is probably a redundant question that you probably answered earlier, obviously, but if DD2 actually stays intact countywide, will the number of seats actually increase?
So are you talking about consolidation?
Yes, sir.
So if the school district were to consolidate, that of course would be a legislative decision, and there are those conversations going on because of the tax issue. DD2 unfortunately has a major funding issue,
yes, sir.
And the way in which we fund schools here is broken. And so if we were to consolidate school districts, I would expect us to increase the number of school board members, because under most systems,
Yes.
you draw your school board lines by county council lines. Well, right now, DD4 only has one member of county council. I don't think that would be fair to them to have only one member on the school board. If we want to bring them in or absorb their territory, we need to ensure they're equally represented as well.
What else should be equal when it comes to this formula?
Well, I think getting back to it, we need to break up this geographic monopoly on the school board. When I say that, as I stated before, we have 3 to 5, most members live within 3 to 5 miles of each other. So Westcott, North Charleston has never had representation. Ridgeville has never had representation. Those areas need representation because those parents are facing unique challenges, whether it's bus schedules, whether it's traffic, whether it's overcrowding. And unless you have representatives representing those areas, sometimes those folks may not feel like they're being represented.
And when you talk to these parents and, obviously the teachers, what else are they telling you about this structure?
Well, most people that I've spoke to are supportive of this issue. And so it is my hope that this support will continue. When we had our press conference last week, as I stated, we had Republicans and Democrats, parents and community members. This is a grassroots effort, and I believe that by doing this, we will have the community support to get it across the finish line, and our hope is that the governor will sign the bill this year.
Now, how will this single-member district formula, Stephen, actually break a tie?
What do you mean by break a tie?
When it comes to voting?
Well, you would have 7 members, so you would never have a tie scenario. You'd either have 3 people for something or 4 people for something. So in that scenario, you really wouldn't have a tie.
Okay. Turning to your re-election, obviously you announced recently that you would seek a second term, and of course you were first elected back in 2021, that is. You said this, quote, 2 years ago I ran for chairman because our party required a bold new direction in order to meet challenges facing our country, state, and nation. Since that time, we have rolled up our sleeves and delivered historic victories for our parties in Dorchester County. Well, let me ask you, what exactly are those challenges right now with your bold new direction?
So, Quintin, first, thank you for that question. When I was elected chairman, our party had not held a fundraiser in over 8 years. We've now held successful fundraisers and raised over $90,000. Secondly, our party had not adequately funded or given any financial support to our Republican nominees, nor did they have a victory program where we enabled our supporters and our volunteers to knock on doors, to make phone calls. So when I talk about the bold new approach and what we've done, we've raised money, we've supported all of our candidates financially, we supported them through mail, we made over 10,000 phone calls, knocked on over 15,000 doors. That is the bold new approach that I talked about, is ensuring that folks know we are an election committee and it is important that we support our nominees in every way possible. Additionally, we've grown our party by over 60%. We have the largest Republican Party in the history of our county, and we've done that by a positive approach to the way in which we operate. So when it comes to our bold new approach in the next term, I look forward to continuing to build off of our success. The challenges that our county faces is, of course, we got to continue to win races. I was very excited that we now have, for the first time, a fully Republican county council. Every elected official is now a Republican, and we beat Democrats in straight ticket voting by 23% in Dorchester County. That is an 8% increase since 2020. The reason that happened is because we marshaled all of our resources and executed a victory program that delivered our message directly to the voters.
And I want to get back to all of that in just a second, but let me ask you, how much money did you all raise total for those candidates?
So what we did is we maximized our donations to each candidate. The maximum donation you can give to a nominee is $1,000. So we did that to all of our Republican nominees. And as I stated, we've raised over $90,000 in the last 2 years. That $90,000 went towards our victory operations. It went towards our mail campaign. It went towards our office that we hadn't had in a long time. So we marshaled all those resources to invest in our victory program so that we can ensure that we won. And by the way, we built a collaborative relationship with the state party. By working with our chairman, Drew McKissick, and his team, we were able to deliver those historic victories up and down the ballot in Dorchester County.
And let me go into that in depth, actually. How will you actually continue to energize, engage, and expand the Republican base in that county so that you can actually win in 2024 and 2025?
That's a great question, Quintin. We've got to keep our eye on the ball and keep focused on growing the party. We've got to continue to recruit new people to join the party. And the way we do that, of course, is through interactive events. If I'm fortunate to be reelected, as you know, we're the birthplace of sweet tea in Somerville. So we're going to be doing the Dorchester GOP Sweet Tea Stop. And essentially what that is going to be is for presidential candidates that are running for president to come to Dorchester County. It's going to be a town hall series where our members and members of the public will be able to interact with those people and to look them in the eye and and ask them the tough questions that are facing our country. That's one way, is interactive events, holding more fundraisers where we have great speakers and people come. But the key is we want everybody to know that you have a place in the Republican Party in Dorchester County. We are a big tent party. You know, our creed says that we are to think and act for ourselves. So whether you are a staunch, strong conservative, or you're more of a moderate Republican, you have a home with Dorchester County Republican Party, and we want your support and your help and your membership.
How many staunch Republicans do you have, and how many moderate Republicans do you have in the county?
Well, I think we have a cross-section of many folks. I mean, you have folks that are more libertarian-minded. You have folks that are more minded towards supporting our military. You have more folks that are socially liberal and fiscally conservative. That has been my goal as chairman, is realizing that in order to win elections, you win them by building coalitions, by realizing we're a family. We're not going to agree on every issue, but if we believe on a core set of principles within our platform, we can get things done and we can grow the party.
Now, your core values, does those actually meet the values and obviously the goals for those moderate Republicans and those staunch Republicans?
I certainly believe they do. You know, we believe in the right to life. We believe in low taxes. We believe in small government. Those are the core ideas. We believe in defending American national security. Those are the core tenets of our party platform. And as I said, we have primaries for a purpose. The primaries where the Republican Party gets to decide who represents us on the general election ballot. That process is always vigorous. It's always fun. Sometimes it can be contentious, but once we get past that primary, we support our nominee and ensure we do everything on our part to ensure they win in the general election.
Now, how many interactive events do you want to have this year, and how many fundraisers do you actually want to have?
So we have one big fundraiser a year. That is what yields us the most funds. That's called our Faith, Family, Freedom Dinner. And as far as interactive events, one thing that I changed when I became chairman is we now break up the way in which we meet. We have a business meeting that is strictly business, and we have a social meeting that is more interactive and less formal. When I was first elected chairman, while I was running, the executive committee meetings were sometimes 3 hours long. That is not a way to recruit new people to be involved in the party. So now we have that social meeting where we have our elected officials come speak to us. We have certain groups that represent certain interests speak to us. And that's where, of course, we will hold these sweet tea stops with those presidential candidates. So going forward, we look forward to hosting forums with those presidential candidates. We look forward to hosting social meetings and hosting family fun events like our Faith, Family, Freedom fundraiser.
Now, since say 2021, how many people have you actually recruited to the party?
We've grown our party by over 60%. I believe, when I was first elected chairman over the last couple of years, we were averaging between 75 members to 100 members. We now have over 175 dues-paying members of the party, and my goal is that we continue to grow. My goal is that by the end of this year, we have at least 250 dues-paying members, because we have to continue to grow. Our population is growing, our county needs are growing, and we have territory to defend in the 2024 elections.
And I want to get to that in just a second, but where have you increased the breadth and depth of the donor base to support and sustain the party's long-term and short-term initiatives to win elections and actually expand the voter base and ensure ballot security?
Absolutely. That's a really great question, Quintin. So first and foremost, as I stated before, we hadn't had a fundraiser in 8 years before I was chairman. So immediately upon winning, I established the fundraiser committee. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work. So we now have business owners. We now have our elected officials. We now have community members and regular Republicans bought in and invested in the Republican Party. That $90,000 that we've raised over the last 2 years, that's how we built a website. That's how we are getting our message out. That's how we established our office. That's how we funded our candidates. That's how we delivered mail. And ultimately, those investments essentially created our victory program that allowed us the opportunity to get the message out so we can expand our voter base, because we realize that now that every elected official in Dorchester County is a Republican, we will have opposition in every election because Democrats want a seat at the table in Dorchester County. It's my job to ensure that we continue to elect and re-elect Republicans.
Now, let me ask you, what other resources do you want to invest in to keep this going?
Well, we're going to continue to do what we've done as far as, advertisements. That's one area that I'd like to improve upon. Another area that I'd like to improve upon, the last 2 years I've really focused on building a foundation for our organization to be successful. Over the next 2 years, we need to work on getting more young people engaged. I was the youngest chairman elected in the history of Dorchester County. I'm one of the youngest chairmen in the state. If the Republican Party wants to survive the next generation, we need to be doing a better job of engaging those young folks. So I would like us to invest in engaging those young folks, getting more young people involved and making them understand what we believe and why they should be Republicans and support the party.
Now, what is that current engagement with the younger voters?
Well, we have, a group called Young Republicans across the state. We just elected a new chairman to that position, Joe Bowers, who you probably know. He's really laser focused on trying to get more young people engaged. As I stated before, if we want to be successful, we have to engage young people better. So my goal is to create teenage Republican clubs in high schools, engage our college Republican groups here in Charleston and around the area, but additionally establish a more cohesive chapter of young Republicans in this area so that we can engage those young folks, get them excited about our candidates, and get their support. Because ultimately, if Republicans do not have young people, we will not be successful in future elections.
So what was that young support in 2020?
I think that we did fairly well. We did better in years past, but we still have work to do. You look at Democrats, their core base of support, one of their constituencies is young people, and Republicans unfortunately have done a poor job of marketing to those young people. That's why I believe it's important that we begin that process, campaign and market to those folks, explain to them our positions. One thing about young people is we don't like to be told what to do. We don't like to be told how to live our lives. That is the core tenets of our Republican Party platform. Is we believe in small government. We believe in low taxes. Democrats believe that government should dictate to you the way in which you live and how much money you give them every year. We believe in small government, low taxes, and I think that's something that we've got to do a better job of, and I believe that's something that we can do if we have the right candidates running in the future.
What candidates do you have right now to position yourself to win in the future?
Well, I think we're going to have a vigorous presidential primary. Of course, all of this starts at the top.
Yes, sir.
President Trump has said that he is running again. He is campaigning here in South Carolina, but you're going to have a wide variety of candidates from across the country run for president of the United States. And I know for South Carolina, we are independent-minded. We are not going to coordinate any candidate to be president of the United States. The person that wins South Carolina will be the person that works the hardest, that meets with the most folks, that travels the state the most. And so ultimately that will be up to primary voters. But I believe that folks need to be in tune with what is important to young people, most especially smaller government, low taxes. And if we have a candidate at the top of the ticket that supports those issues, I believe we will do very well in the 2024 elections.
Who's that must-see candidate right now, one to watch in your county?
In Dorchester County, we've got Representative Gil Gatch. He's a pretty young person. We have Representative Gary Brewer, who was just elected.
Right.
He's a younger guy. But we've got many great people that are looking to run for office. We've got some races that we're looking to target. Representative Joe Jefferson barely won his race in the last election. I believe that if his race was on our list of targets to flip sooner, we probably would have done that. Unfortunately, there were some other races like Representative Matt Lieber and Representative Jordan Pace that we were looking to flip.
Sure.
But we are going to be looking at identifying candidates to run against Democrats in the future so we can continue to expand our Republican majority in the House and our Republican representation in Dorchester County.
And I want to get to that in just a second, but during the 2020 presidential, let me ask you this. How many Democratic votes were there versus Republican votes in the presidential election in Dorchester County?
Well, President Trump won Dorchester County, I believe it was 52 or 54%. I believe Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got around 43%. So it was a pretty wide margin. But the simple fact is over 50 people are moving to the Charleston area every day.
Yes, sir.
Those people are locating in Dorchester County because we have our homes are cheaper than Charleston, our schools are better than Charleston, and we just have a really great culture there. And so it's important upon us to realize that nothing can be taken for granted. We've got to continue to work hard to earn the hearts, the votes of those that are running and sway the hearts and minds of those that are voting. And that's what we'll continue to do in the future, because we don't want Dorchester County to become purple. We want it to keep being ruby red.
But how many Republican votes have grown in a presidential election in the Dorchester County over the years? We've
consistently grown with population, but that percentage has remained pretty consistent over the course of the last decade. Republicans have won there on the presidential race by about 10% every election, probably over the last 20 years. So that hasn't changed, but as I stated before, there's a lot of people moving here from other areas of the country. Some of them may be Republicans, some of them may be Democrats. It's important that we identify those Republicans and we get them to the polls.
Now, how many have you identified thus far since they have moved to Dorchester County, I should say?
So our state party is very good about our data. So we are constantly getting data updates. They're constantly telling us, new folks that have moved to the area, and we have goals of registering people to vote. And so what we try to do is when those new people move to the area, we want to constantly contact them, invite them to our meetings, let them know they need to get registered to vote, they need to vote Republican, and those are part of our efforts that I would like to improve upon going forward. As I said, that's a lot of people moving to the area, thousands of people, over the course of many years, and we've got to continue to get those folks to be engaged with us and support our candidates.
Since this is 2023, Chairman, how many voters do you want to register, new voters?
That is a very good question, Quintin. I would expect us, I think, I can't remember what our goals were last year, but we met those goals. We typically get those goals from the state party, and essentially what it is for folks that are moving into the area, we want to register those folks. And we do that through many ways. We do that by being involved in community events. We do that by hosting our own events. We do that by engaging voters directly. And so our message to folks that move here or that are not registered is register to vote and vote Republican.
Now, you talked earlier about the growth in Dorchester County. How many of those people actually are moving to Dorchester County that have come from parts of the country that are predominantly Democratic-controlled local governments?
That's a great question, Quintin. A lot of folks are moving from New York and New Jersey. We have some folks moving from California. And my point to those folks is remember why you moved here. You didn't move here simply because we're nice or because our weather is beautiful. You moved here because your taxes were high, your government was big, and you felt like you weren't represented. So it is important to remember what you left. And you came to South Carolina because we're a conservative state, we leave you alone, we have low taxes, we have a friendly business environment, and of course we have a great culture and we're hospitable. So my message to those folks that do move here is remember where you came from and let's ensure that we keep South Carolina red.
So in Dorchester County, for instance, which population that is being underrepresented?
I believe right now, all of our population is pretty equally represented. As I stated, the school board, that's a specific area that we're looking to restore equal representation. As I've stated before, a majority of our school board members live within 3 to 5 miles of each other. But most folks, I feel, are equally represented. And one thing I will say about all of our elected officials in Dorchester County is whether you're a Republican or Democrat, they seek to serve everyone equally. When you call and you need something, they don't answer their phone and say, are you Republican and Democrat? They ask what your name is, where do you live, how can they help you? And that's something that we are very blessed with in Dorchester County.
Well, let me ask you this. The demographics of Dorchester County have shifted by how much?
That is a really good question. I can't answer that right now, Quintin. I haven't seen the most recent census data, but I do know, as I've stated, that we've had a lot of people move in from other areas of the country. I just don't have a specific answer on what the geographic or the data has, demographic data has changed.
Now, speaking of demographics, what is your plan, your strategic plan to target African Americans?
Well, Quintin, that is a really good question. That is something that I was laser focused on when I ran the first time, and we've been very successful at that. As a matter of fact, if you recall, County Councilwoman Harriet Holman, an African American woman, left the Democratic Party and now is a Republican. She has been really leading our efforts, engaging the African American community. The way in which we do that is by continuing to build trust in that community by ensuring that they understand what we believe. And the way in which our party has done that is we have great members of our Faith Outreach Committee. They're holding faith outreach workshops with black churches and white churches together and in a unified front to outline what we believe and why we believe it. That's the way in which we're directly engaging the African American community, and I expect us to continue to do that in the future because that community, in my opinion, has been poorly represented by the Democratic Party, and it is important upon Republicans to outline why they should support us and why they should vote for us in the future.
You said it is obviously the Democratic Party has poorly represented the African Americans, but do the African Americans trust Republicans?
That's what it all comes down to, Quintin. It's building that trust. People are not going to vote for you unless you trust them. And the way in which we are building the trust is by, of course, Councilwoman Holman. She's speaking to her neighbors, her friends, her fellow Democrats that were, that haven't exactly left the Democratic Party. I will say when she switched parties, we've had a number of people leave the Democratic Party with her, and now they're regularly attending our meetings. In fact, this is a true story, but we had an event with the governor, and she brought Democrats with her. They were just there to learn and to hear from the governor, and they said, y'all are just so happy When we're at the Democratic Party meetings, they always seem so upset and they're not happy. It's that positive attitude that we have to display. But most importantly is we have to build trust and let them know what we believe and why we believe it. And I believe if we do that, we'll be successful.
And one last question, because I have to run over to the interview with Dwayne Lewis, that is. But let me ask you, since obviously Councilwoman Harry Hallman has moved over from Democrat to Republican, how many of those people have actually become Republicans as a result of her victory?
We've had, I don't know a specific number, but at least 20 folks leave the Democratic Party that were supportive of Councilwoman Hallman, and now they're Republicans. And the reason they're Republicans is because we built that trust relationship. We've let them know what we believe. And I believe if we are effective in communicating our message and letting Democrats know what we believe, we will continue to grow our party. If you look across the country, the 2022 midterms were a letdown for Republicans. But in states where Republicans did well, whether it was Governor McMaster, Governor Kemp, Governor DeSantis, those folks are rock solid conservatives. They didn't win by 20 to 30 points because of only Republicans voting for them. They won because Democrats voted for them as well. They had an appealing message, and they appealed to the issues that matter most to their constituents.
Where was this letdown in the midterms for Dorchester County?
We didn't have a letdown. We had a very huge red wave. As I stated before, in Dorchester County, we beat Democrats in straight ticket voting by 23%, an 8% increase from 2020. We won all of our offices. We're looking to pick up more offices in the future. And it's my hope, with Drew McKissick now being the co-chairman of the RNC, that he'll bring together some of those effective strategies we deployed in South Carolina, bring those to purple states so we can flip seats there and win states in the future.
How many seats do you hope to pick up this year?
Well, right now, we're really laser focused on I believe it's House Seat 102, which is Joe Jefferson. Where the current candidate that ran against him is interested in running again, but 2 years is a lifetime. If he chooses not to run, I expect us to recruit somebody, fully support that person, and attempt to flip that House seat so we can broaden the Dorchester delegation and expand our supermajority in the State House.
And I will be bringing on the Dorchester County Democratic Party chair to get his side of all of this politics that's going on in Dorchester County and beyond. But Steven Wright with the Dorchester GOP, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I appreciate it.
Likewise.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.